My name is Giovanni, better known as Johnny Giovanni. I'm the designer and owner of Stoneworthy, and I'm a hardscaper.
What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 205 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have another I Am a Hardscaper episode, where we do a deep dive into a hardscaper's business. And today we've got Giovanni from Stoneworthy on. So we'll get right into that episode once we're done thanking our two sponsors here. Thank you to Cycle CPA. If you need bookkeeping, accounting, or CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA. www.cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off their services there, as well as GPS Track It. If you need GPS tracking for your work vehicles equipment, go to gpstrackit.com/how-to-hardscape. And a big thanks to our sponsors there for supporting the show here. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Okay, Giovanni, let's get started to get to know a little bit about you yourself. Let's start with how you started in this industry. Can you give our audience a little bit of context about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the industry probably about 15 years ago. My father had been a mason his whole life. And, in 2008, in the beginning of the recession, he had the brightest idea that he wanted to branch off on his own. So he had a gentleman that was helping him out, and he's actually with us till this very day. But, I wasn't a big fan of going to summer school. So he was like, either like, hey, if you want to go to summer school, you're fine. But if you want to come back and if you want to come work with me, you can do that. But the only thing you can't do is stay home. So I was like, all right, well, cool. I'll go work with you then, So definitely started in the summer of 2008. And we do a lot of, at that point, we were doing a lot of masonry. So pretty much my job every summer was just making concrete for the guys.
Nice. That's a good intro to get started in the industry there. What was that like hopping on with your dad there? Was he intentionally like putting you on a difficult job to kind of get started in the industry to show you like it's not all sunshine and rainbows and you're gonna have to work your way up to get to where you are?
Probably, because like I said, it was just him and another gentleman, and they're both really good stonemasons. So somebody had to mix all the concrete. So I don't know if that was his intention, like, hey, let me scare him off so he can go off to the college route or, whatever the case may be. But I mean, I definitely liked it. It was tedious work lifting up 80, 90-pound bags into the mixer, making it right. But it was also a learning experience because since we do a lot of masonry, at that time we were heavily more focused on masonry. I was just so fascinated by all the different types of stone, the different types of applications, and like I learned a lot, with like the stone's origin, definitely like different mixes of concrete for different applications.
Definitely. And going off that, we'll touch on natural stone a little bit later here, but where does your evolution through the business, like from mixing concrete, what's the next step that you sort of like work your way through the business there with your dad?
Absolutely. So I would say from 2008, at least till 2000, probably 12, 2013, my role was just mixing concrete. So, that was pretty much what I did for my summers. But I think in 2013, we started focusing a lot more in hardscapes. Like, even though we're technically classified as masons, it's not that far off. It's still stone work. So we started doing getting a lot more involved, like in, being hardscapers as far as like installing patios, driveways, a lot of retaining walls. So I think probably in 2013, when I had finished school and everything, I was getting a lot more involved into the hardscape side of things. And I definitely liked it a lot, just because it's like, it's cool, like just going to a job site one day, bidding it out, kind of it being an empty canvas, then, in a few days or weeks or whatever the project scope may be, just seeing like the finished product is just crazy.
Yeah, where does hardscape start to fit into the business model? Was it like an opportunity that presented itself that you guys were able to just quote on, or was it like a definitive, yeah, we're gonna go in this direction and do more, patios, driveways, like you were saying there, in addition to the masonry side of it?
Yeah, so definitely. So even though when we were mixing concrete, and at least when I was mixing the concrete, we would do like a lot of porcelain and a lot of other like hardscape type applications, but I'd say it was a 80-20 mix, as opposed to it now being a 80% hardscapes and 20% masonry. So even though, we were doing a lot of masonry, like actual like stone and stuff, we still did, a few hardscape projects, but I definitely like doing just like, like messing around with like concrete pavers, like natural stone a lot.
Nowadays, you're the designer. So can you fill in the gap between mixing concrete to becoming the designer and starting with those hardscapes?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a middle step in there, or I guess a middle phase in there. So I went from mixing concrete, in 2013, actually learning how to install hardscapes. So my father has been like one of my biggest mentors, and he's just like, hey, this is how we do things, or hey, this is how I learn. So for a while, I was just kind of like one of the guys and working, and I really liked it. And then we had a couple architects that we would work hand in hand with, and I was always interested in the plans, and like I would look at the plans and I was just like, oh, that's awesome design, because everybody has their own style. And I feel like a lot of things in this industry are very cookie cutter, or people will pick like the same 2-3 products and they'll run with it. So I definitely got some inspiration just from kind of seeing different things. But, me being a designer was totally by accident. I focused a lot more on project management, and we had a designer, and she actually wanted to go on her own way. She got her dream job somewhere, and at that point we weren't working with any architects or any designers. So I was just like, well, hey, you know what? I know the process of how things are done, kind of like the overall scope of, this is like the estimating process, then this is the build process, but within the design process, I was like, hey, well, let me kind of focus on different things. So it was definitely something that happened by accident, but I mean, it was a blessing in disguise. I've been doing it for probably like the last 2.5 years already now.
Okay, so where does your eye for design come from? Was this something that just developed from the time you decided, yeah, I'm going to be the designer, or is this something that developed through years of experience and being in the field and being able to pick out certain things that were being done, or like you're saying, talking with architects there? How did you develop that eye for your designs?
So originally I wanted to go to school for like ADR and Foley. So pretty much do like sound effects, for like TV shows and movies, and or either like even songs, So I wanted to go into like the audio industry, but that was something I always wanted to do. But like the more I thought about it, is just like the core principles of, coming up with like sound effects, and like coming up with like designs. It's like the same principle, because like you're composing something. Obviously audio is intangible, as opposed to a design. It starts off intangible and then it becomes something tangible. So I feel like, if you really break it down to its cores, I like putting things together and creating something awesome.
Evidently you've created something awesome. So I'm not going to say it. I'll let you kind of take it away there with the Unilock front cover. What about that belongs to you, I guess, in a way?
Yeah. So I'm definitely, first and foremost, I'm definitely grateful. Like it's not something. I mean, there's like no real guide to making a cover. Every year it's something different, so it's like there's, you like all these big manufacturers don't come out with a guide like saying, hey, if you want to make the cover, do a driveway or a walkway and use these products. So they definitely leave it to the imagination. So that was that was incredible. But I have a really good Unilock rep. His name is Phil, and he's been lingering for a while, I would say. We're very tackle block focused, and he's a great guy to deal with. And I was just like, what, let me give him a shot. He's been trying. And so since this was technically like one of our first Unilock projects, or at least mine, we've installed it in the past, I was like, I want to do something out of the ordinary. They came out with like this Yukara fireplace. In my opinion, it's awesome. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I just think it's a little bit too traditional. So I was like, you know what? I want to create it like a see-through, like modern fireplace, and just kind of it was interesting, just because like I asked, I met with them at the Unilock location in Aurora at their headquarters, and I kind of explained to them what I wanted to do, and they were just like, "Hey, it hasn't been done before, but we don't see why not." And we kind of looked at the frames and we kind of decided, hey, well, we can maybe make the cut here. So it was definitely a massive learning experience, just because it's something that hasn't been done before. But hey, all the good things in life aren't easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to use that fireplace, and I wanted to incorporate modern elements, just because at least right now that's kind of where I see that trend. So I just wanted to prove that, like, hey, you know what? They're a great company to work with. I have nothing but respect for Unilock and everybody that works there. And I just kind of wanted to go outside the norm, just because I feel like people do like similar installs with Unilock where they just keep picking out like similar products and they run with it. And nothing's wrong with that. Obviously they're finding success in that, but I just wanted to do something different. Like, hey, you know what? I can create something like that you would see like on the East Coast or West Coast, like just something super modern while using their products.
With that being said, how do you find the client that's willing to do something new and put together something like that? Was the client like completely on board with whatever vision you had? Was it something that you had to pitch them to see if they would want to do it, and then, like you said, go to Unilock and see how you could actually do it? What was the process there with the client?
So fortunately, I'd say we as a company, we're in a pretty unique situation. Luckily, we get a good amount of inquiries a day, from prospects and customers, and we're kind of known as just like that company that will do some crazy stone installs. So when people reach out to me, like I said, I'm truly blessed, because when I will meet with a homeowner, like they'll ask me, like, hey, I just want to know, like, hey, what are your wants and what are your needs? And fortunately for me, I come up with a design, and they're very open to what I have to say. And I'm very blessed, because it's more than likely, like 95% of the time, they just let me run with it.
Nice.
So when I met with this particular couple, they were just like, hey, we just want like a fire feature, and we want like an outdoor kitchen. So I was like, hey, I'm like, all right, well, that gives me something to base it off of. Their house is very modern. They just had the house built not that long ago. So I came up with three different concepts. And, fortunately for me, this was like probably the second or third concept that was picked.
Is that what you typically do, is provide like a client a few different designs, a few different concepts, and then they choose one and then you might refine it from there?
Depending on the scope, obviously this was something I really wanted to do. So I definitely had three different concepts. Originally, that fireplace was supposed to be angled on a side. But I just kind of wanted to give them that option, like, hey, this is my vision, what do you think about it? So not really, I won't really provide three, but in this particular case, like, I honestly felt like I couldn't go wrong. Well, that's not true, because I mean, obviously, I definitely feel like this was a better revision or concept, as you would say.
I want to interrupt this episode to talk to you about GPS Track It. When it comes to running a landscaping business, the question isn't what do you do, but what don't you do? If it's not a customer that needs your attention, it's one of your drivers or one of your vehicles. But you already know that GPS Track It exists to help you know more than what you already know, like the most efficient routes to maximize your service potential, like whether or not your vehicles and crews are where they're supposed to be, like how to save unnecessary fuel costs and other costs. And we're going to be covering the benefits of GPS tracking in the future on this podcast. So we're going to continue with the benefits of GPS tracking, but we'll let our fleet advisors give you the full picture. Call 866-693-1291 or go to gpstrackit.com/howtohardscape. Once again, that's 866-693-1291 or go to gpstrackit.com/howtohardscape. Link will be in the show notes. And then going back to what you said earlier, starting from masonry and leaning heavily into natural stone, and then kind of working towards hardscapes, patios, driveways, and leaning onto the other side for concrete products. Let's just talk a little bit about your, I don't know, preferences or your likes, dislikes, anything about natural stone that you just love as opposed to concrete, or concrete products, the things that you love about that as opposed to natural. Like where do you try to fit those two elements into a design, and when do you decide to go with concrete, when do you decide to go with natural? Just a general kind of question to just throw at you to see what kind of thoughts you have on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great question. So I definitely love natural stone, and it's the reason why I named our company Stoneworthy. I just, I'm a big fan, just because it's something that's created by Mother Earth or nature, I guess, like you think about it, it takes thousands and thousands of years to create like a natural product like that, as opposed to a natural stone, which, can take a few days. But I don't know, it's just like whenever you grab a piece of like natural stone, whether it's like a natural cleft bluestone or, like an outcropping or something like that, you look at it and like I just love looking at the veining or just the different characteristics out there, and just knowing that like, hey, this is probably, one of one, or there isn't another piece like it. I like marble, I like granite, and we do like some installs with that too, but just like looking at the veining, and I just think about, I'm like, this came from like the other side of the world, or just kind of like the beauty in it, so I like it a lot, and I know like even with like limestone, there's like a lot of like browns and reds, and a lot of people aren't a fan of that, but I'm just like, that's like the beauty of natural stone, like all the imperfections, and doing like an install, like, very professionally, where it just enhances like those imperfections and it overall completes the masterpiece. So I definitely am a fan of natural stone. However, it's not for every application. Like, since bluestone, I love bluestone, but since bluestone is a sandstone, it's very porous. So like on pool decks, it's not something I would recommend, just because, if you're in the pool and you step on bluestone, it kind of feels like you're on the beach. It just gets very hot when the sun's hitting it.
Right.
So, and that's when I would recommend concrete pavers. So I definitely would recommend concrete pavers for like pool decks, just areas of entertainment, like outdoor living spaces that are going to get heavy traffic. People, I mean, I'm messy, I know other people are messy, so natural stone is definitely less maintenance than natural stone. If something happens to a paver, I mean, well, either way, with natural stone or concrete pavers, you can just pull it out, and put a new one in. So that's the beauty of it, as opposed to like stamped concrete that, hey, once it's cracked or something like that, you're going to patch it and it's going to be an eyesore. But I mean, it all has its time and place, I guess, between concrete pavers and natural stone.
And going back to your family dynamic with this business, can you talk about pros and cons as to working with a family member, especially as so close as being within the same business? Pros and cons, I guess, things that you've really enjoyed and things that you wish didn't happen or didn't exist, I guess, in the family business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so being in business with my father is awesome. Like I said, he's like a very close mentor and like one of my best friends. In the beginning, it wasn't very easy, just because it's like we had the dynamic that, I was working for him, and nothing's wrong with that, but obviously I kind of wanted to do things different, not with like the applications or anything, but I was just like, hey, what if we did this, or what if we did that? And I kind of feel like that's when my eye for design started, beginning. But the dynamic now has been definitely night and day. It's different when you're working for somebody as opposed to working with somebody. And I feel like that has been like the biggest change ever, just because it's like now we have like the same goal, like the same mentality, like, hey, we want to do, installs, and we want to do things right, but we also want to run a business, and we want to run a successful business. So I guess that's like the biggest pro, is that, hey, we're on the same page. We know what needs to be done. We definitely support each other. And I feel like that's important, and definitely just having open communication, just because it's like, you hear it all the time, like, hey, don't do business with family, but it's like, I feel like, and by no means, am I right or wrong, but I just feel like, like when people say that, like the communication isn't there, or people aren't aligned with like the same values and goals. But I feel like it's different, when everybody's on the same page, we know what needs to be done, and we'll try our best every single time.
Yeah. And how did your roles develop to know that you needed to step into that designer role? And then what does your dad kind of focus on in the business as well? And how did you guys, come to know and agree upon, not just know, but also agree upon these roles within the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, after like in 2013, to 2000, probably 15 or 16, I was an installer full time. And, like I said, it kind of goes back to that dynamic of working for one another. And I just, like I said, I feel like I'm a creative individual, and there was just some things I wanted to try and things like that. And by no means was I right or wrong, but I just feel like, transitioning into the designer role now, after I was an installer for a few years, I kind of, went off somewhere, went to school, went, to work somewhere else. But I definitely missed the industry, and the corporate world wasn't for me. So, and my father had been amazing his whole life, and that's all he knows. So he was at one point, I think like in 2000, probably 18, there was a little bit of struggling there. And I was just like, well, hey, if I invest and, I want to invest, I want to, buy my way in. And if we can become like partners and figure this out together, I'm all for it. And that's kind of when we were talking about like, hey, well, we kind of came up with our business plan, like, hey, what do we want to do? What do we want to achieve? And how do we plan to scale? So after that, I solely focused as a project manager, just kind of making sure, I would go on job sites, estimate, make sure we'll get things done within a certain time, just because it's like, when you've been an installer and you talk with a homeowner, you know the steps, like the steps on how things need to be done, how long it will take. So that was definitely a big plus, being in the field for a few years. And then we hired a designer, and like I said, she got her dream job. She left her own way. I wish her nothing but the absolute best. And we were without a designer architect, and I interviewed a lot of designers and architects, and nobody really caught my eye. Like, not that like, like their work was bad or anything, but I want to keep doing new innovative things, and everybody was a little bit more reserved and a little bit more traditional in that sense. And like I said, nothing's wrong with it, but it didn't really align with the things I wanted to do. So I kind of took it upon myself, where I'm just like, well, hey, what if I got to sketch this stuff out, or if I got to learn this computer program, I definitely will. And like I said, it's been the biggest blessing so far.
So a potential client reaches out to Stoneworthy. Who are they reaching out to? Who speaks to them? Who's their first point of contact? And then what are the steps to pre-qualify them to see if they'd be a good fit to set up maybe a consultation? Or what's your sales process from start to that initial consultation?
Yeah, so when somebody calls our number, one of two people will pick up. Either the office manager or I will pick up the phone. Both of our phones ring, so I guess whoever has the ability to answer the phone call will answer that phone call. But after that, so obviously things change over the years. Before in the past, we would schedule a time for me to kind of go out there and look at the overall project. But in today's day, now that we've been fortunate enough to get quite a few calls a day, I can't be scheduling, estimate after estimate. So what we do now is we'll schedule a time where, both parties can attend the phone call, and we can kind of go over the scope of work and what needs to be done. So then that way I can kind of see if this is going to be a good fit for both parties.
Gotcha. And then from scheduling that initial consultation, deciding actually, can we kind of expand on how do you, what kind of questions are you asking them to see if it would be a good fit for both parties? And like, maybe what are some red flags that might show up to decide, you know what, this probably isn't the client that I want to be booking a consultation with? What kind of things kind of come up in that conversation that dissuade you from setting up that initial consultation?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll ask them like, like, hey, how's it going? Like, pretty much like, what are you looking for? Do you know what kind of materials? Is there a design? And, there's nothing wrong with, a very small job or a big job, we'll take them. To me, it doesn't matter about the size, but I just want to make sure that whatever we do, we're doing it in a creative sense and, making sure our name stands behind it. So the things I stay away from is cookie cutter stuff. Like, hey, I want like a 16 by 18 patio. And I'm just like, well, do you know what? And they're like, hey, I want like Holland or Brussels. And I'm just like, maybe if we can create like a outdoor living space, maybe with like some type of fire feature, seat wall, I can definitely assist you with that. And if they're just like dead set on, no, I just want a space where I can put a dining room table and chairs, I'm just like, well, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be a good fit, but I definitely have a few colleagues here and I definitely will recommend them. But I just, like I said, I just want to be known as a company and as an individual who just like has like their own staple. Like when you see the job, you're like, yep, Stoneworthy did it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that thought process of creating that brand identity essentially within your designs and within what you're building there. Do you feel like you've reached that point where you have that and people are reaching out to you for that specific thing, or do you feel like you're on the cusp of that and you're getting to that next stage, or will you ever feel satisfied in something like designs, which can be so subjective, I guess, and just your thought process on that?
Yeah, like I said, fortunately we get quite a few calls a day, a lot more than what we did, a few years back. And like I said, I'm nothing but grateful for it. So now, when people call and they'll speak to me or like even DM me on Instagram, whether it's on my design page or whether it's on our Stoneworthy page, or just like, hey, what can we do to get you out here? We're interested in talking to you and seeing what you can come up with our space that we have here. So fortunately, like I said, nothing but grateful. But now when I get calls, people are just like, hey, you know what? What can you do here? So I have a lot of creativity now, which, like I said, I definitely feel like I've worked hard for it. My coworkers have worked hard for it. So like I said, I feel like I'm truly blessed because like I'll look at the aesthetics of the home. I'll talk with the homeowner. I kind of feel out like what they like, what their style is, and it helps me create a project. And it's great because I'll use like different products. I try to switch it up, but making sure it complements my overall design.
Gotcha. And then when it comes to scheduling that initial consultation, so the client may be a good fit for you, do you guys charge for the initial consultation? And if so, why or why not?
So before in the past, we wouldn't charge, but now, like I said, obviously we have a good amount of phone calls coming in a day where it puts me in a position where I can't see everybody. So if you're within like a 5-10 minute radius, I definitely will go out there, especially if it's in the town where our office is. I'll go out there free of charge, because I want to help and I want to be, in the community. But now we started charging anywhere between like $150 and $250 for me to go on site. And it's not that, I need the money. I mean, we donate the money. So we pick charities now, and that money gets donated, and if they go with us at the end of the job, we'll match that donation. So like, if I charge them $200 to go out there, at the end, I'll donate it. But we started doing that, and like I said, it's not to deter, like by no means like tire kickers or anybody, but it's like, like I just, I'm only one person, and I don't plan to scale out to become a bigger company, just because, like I said, I want to make sure that we have our quality control, and that every job reflects, our name and our design, and everything is, as perfect as it can be, if that makes sense. So, I know a lot of these companies and try to scale up and be the biggest company they can, and nothing's wrong with that. But I'm very oriented in making sure we have the quality control down as a company.
Gotcha. And then when I've always liked the idea of donating the initial consultation, because at least it pre-qualifies the client that they're buying into something, but at least they also know that that money is going to a good cause. Do you let them know beforehand that, hey, we charge for consultation, but this consultation money will go to a charity? Or do you let them know after the fact, so that they actually do kind of buy into the consultation as opposed to justifying that it does go to charity? What's your thought process around that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's something that we just started doing recently, and I'll let them know. I'm just like, hey, it's not that I need the money. It's just that, there's charities out there, and we have a few charities that I truly believe that they deserve the money. So it's like, I'm all about, helping and giving back. And, I'm not just picking any charities. So like I said, we have a list, that I definitely, will donate that money to. But I do let them know. I'm just like, hey, well, if you want me to come out, it's definitely, I'll be like, hey, it's a $125 charge. But, that money gets donated to charity, whether if you want to send it to us, through PayPal, or if you want to do it on your behalf, just send me confirmation and we'll get it penciled in the calendar.
I just want to take a break from today's episode to talk about our sponsor, Cycle CPA. You may have a CRM or project management software in place, but what data are you using to ensure your estimating is accurate? Having a proper accounting setup and accurate bookkeeping done is key to understanding overhead expenses and other costs that must be recouped in your estimates. Cycle CPA is a remote bookkeeping and CFO firm that helps to connect the dots from the financial reports to the hardscape and landscape data needed in order to reach high profits. They provide landscape and hardscape industry benchmarking, job costing financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA's team of accountants are specialized within the hardscape and landscape industry, and you can visit them at cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. So you schedule that initial consultation, you go to site. What kind of questions are you asking? What are you looking for in the client to see like what's going to go into that design for them, and what aspects and features are you going to include?
Yeah, I mean, so when I go onto a job site, after the introduction has been made face to face, not over the phone, I will, after the introduction has been made, I want to hear what they have to say. Obviously, I just can't come up with whatever I want to come up with. I have to hear them out. There's probably a reason why they want that space done, or they want the work done. So I try to hear them out. I try to listen to, what they have to say. I then try to compose something after that. So I'll give them ideas. I'll give them like, hey, this product might look good here, or hey, an outdoor kitchen over here would be a great element to add to it too. So I kind of try to, hear them out. I give them ideas, and then, if they're kind of on board with like, hey, yeah, fire element sounds good, and a water feature over here, and then it gives me the capability of, going back and coming up with designing a living space that is tailored to them.
Then they go ahead with a design or something in terms of getting that project started. How many, I guess, revisions do you allow a client? Do you let them know that up front in the design? You mentioned earlier with that Unilock cover design that you presented 3 options, and sometimes you don't do that. So where do you know, I guess what I'm asking, that you're going to present a client a few different options, or when do you know that you're going to present a client one option and provide them with a certain amount of revisions? Or do you provide revisions up front, or is it more of a collaborative effort with a client? Just in terms of your design package, how do you go about that, Giovanni?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I send them, like I do charge for a design, and I include 3. I used to include 2 revisions, but I include 3. Luckily, I haven't been in a position where it's past 3. So I'll let them know, and they'll see it on the sheet too. Like, hey, you get 3 revisions. Each revision after that is charged at whatever rate is specified to whatever I'm designing. So I'll let them know. But fortunately, they'll either pick like the first one or second one, and we'll run with it. So like I said, I'm very fortunate, but that all comes from hearing them out and listening to what they want and what they need. If you're and it's not that I try to, go out of the park and, design it with every little bell and whistle. I definitely, like I said, I really try to make it just tailored towards them and what we spoke about. And sometimes I'll go outside the box and add a few features just to kind of show them the potential. And like I said, I've been nothing but fortunate because they've been like, yeah, let's do it.
Do you ever ask them on site if they want a certain feature, and maybe you catch them thinking about it and eventually saying no or saying maybe? Do you ever incorporate that into the design so that at least they can see it and they can maybe take it out afterwards? What are your thoughts on doing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so I do. So like, whether it's like a putting green, a water feature, fire feature, I'll include it in my design. And when I price things out, I break them down. Like item 1 is, removals, item 6 is, the putting green, item 7 is the fire pit. So they can definitely pick and choose. They can pick and choose like what makes financial sense for them, and their home. So, but I definitely will include it in there just so they can see what the true potential of their space can be. Like, hey, I know we spoke about this, but like this is what it could look like one day if you do decide to. And I always let customers know, hey, you can start, with a base. I wouldn't say base model, but hey, you can start with this and you can always add to it.
Right.
And not everybody has the financial capabilities. I don't either. So it's like it's perfectly normal for people to do things in phases. So I definitely let people know that hey, you don't have to do it all in one go. And luckily, like if people are doing it in phases, they'll keep reaching out like, hey, I think I'm ready for this fire feature. Hey, I'm ready for the water feature, or whatever it may be. But I definitely will present it just because it's like me as a designer. I want to show them the true potential of what we can create.
I love that idea of phased approaches if it doesn't exactly fit within their budget for that. And so a client goes ahead. What are your payment structures like typically, or do they vary from project to project? So what are you thinking for like percentage wise as a down payment and starting the project? Do you have a specific payment structure for all of this that you leave a certain amount at the end, or does it vary from project to project?
No, it definitely became standardized like in the last year and a half, where we'll collect 50% prior to starting the job. Once we're at 50% completion, we require 25% plus whatever add-ons have been added to that scope of work. And then once we finish the job, and if it passes like village approval and all that, then we'd like to receive the remaining 25% plus whatever add-ons were added to that job.
Gotcha. And then I asked this question after that because usually the answer has something to do with payments. Doesn't have to, though. And that question is a horror story from your time in business, your time working for your father, anything that you've experienced throughout your time in the industry. A horror story between you, a client, the business, the client, or something that happened on site. Can be anything and everything. But the reason why I asked this is for those listening in that are just starting their business or want to start their own business, to let them know the things that could happen, maybe even put some things in place to prevent them from happening. But Giovanni, do you have a horror story that you would want to share?
Ooh, let me think about that one for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
Unfortunately, I'm trying to think, but there really hasn't been one, I would say, which I'm completely grateful for. I would say the only horror story that I've had, and it's not much of a horror story because it wasn't our fault, is we were putting on like this big piece of limestone, like this slab for this kitchen. And when we received it, once the loader came and got off the truck and, pulled the side of the bed down, it was cracked. and the homeowner wasn't happy, I wouldn't be happy either because she had an event that weekend. But I mean, like I said, it was nobody's fault, and I'd say fortunately for me, that's been my biggest horror story just because, I really tried to push my coworkers so we could finish. But other than that, I've been blessed. I haven't had like any major horror stories. I have a lot of colleagues in the industry, and unfortunately for them, they told me a few of the other stories they've dealt with. But like I said, I've truly been blessed not to be in a situation like that. You know, um, but yeah, I'd say probably that's the only horror story that comes to mind.
So then how do you manage that with a client that would evidently and justifiably be kind of upset when they had that, event planned, and something like that shows up that they weren't expecting? How do you manage their I guess emotions in that, in finding that out at first? And what do you say to them to try to make them feel, a little bit better about that situation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I don't, it wasn't their fault. It wasn't our fault. Like I said, it could have happened during transportation. It could have happened at the quarry. I mean, wherever it happened, it happened. So the homeowners were upset, but I was just like, well, you're gonna have a countertop one way or another. So I ended up, since like I said, our niche is just stonework. So we have like granite slabs and all that at our location. So what we did is we actually went back to our facility. I grabbed them like a temporary countertop for that weekend. It wasn't perfect by any means, because I mean it wasn't, for that application, but we definitely grabbed a few slabs and we made it work. She had them the couple had them temporarily. They were still able to use the space and everything, so it didn't take them out of commission. At that point, you just have to come up with a solution. You just have to feel like you have to see like, hey, this is a problem. What can I do just to kind of save the day? Even though like, there was something bad happen, it's like, all right, well, now I have to figure it out. So I definitely try to be a problem solver.
And excellent problem solving, I'm sure, on the spot for something like that to happen. But excellent story nonetheless there. Giovanni, a few other questions before we kind of close up here. I like to ask this to everybody. Some people have something to say about this. Some people just I'll just ask: installation methods, equipment, tools, systems, anything in your business that throughout your time in the business you really stand by, you found really helped your business, or things in the future that you hope to kind of implement into your business? Could be installation practices, could be equipment, could be tools, could be a system that you put in place, but anything and everything there that you would want to talk about that's helped improve your business, or that you hope to get on board in the near future to improve your business.
Yeah, it's a great question. So pretty much we have a certain standard, since we stand behind our work, and, obviously we give a warranty out to our clients. So whenever we do walls, like retaining walls or like true retention walls, I make sure, there's GeoGrid, every few rows, I make sure, it has proper drainage, the proper backfill, depending on what the application may be. When we're doing patios, all of our patios have about 8 inches of gravel minimum, at least now. Before it was 6 to 7, but now it's 8. And we throw in drive grid in there.
Nice.
Just to make sure, just to add that peace of mind, just because it's like nothing. I mean, in a perfect world, things settle after 10 to 15 years. And I don't know where everybody's in different places in the world. And, at least here, like in the northern side of Illinois, there's a lot of homes being built. So, everything settles after a while, or I guess, so I try to make sure we put GeoGrid. I just try to make sure we add like as much preventative maintenance as we can, with justifiable gravel base drive grid. Because it's like nothing's worse than, being super busy and then getting a call from a homeowner like, hey, my patio is sinking or it's sunk here. And then it's like, trying to schedule that, you're going to have to pull some guys out. And then before you realize that it took a few hours, half a day, or however complex the situation became about. So I definitely try to over engineer things just so that if I do get a call from a client, it's because they want to add phase number 2, 3, 4, whatever it may be, and not just, hey, we had a problem with this. So we definitely try to over engineer things as a company, and we try to make sure every install is stone worthy.
Anybody that you want to give a shout out here on this episode that has helped you along the way, mentors, online, offline, people that you look to for inspiration, anybody here that you want to give a shout out?
Yeah, I have like a mini list.
Sure.
So first and foremost, I think like a mentor that a lot of people should look up to, in my opinion, is Paver Pete. He definitely is like ICPI certified, and he just has like a lot more certifications, and he's very well versed in the industry. And TechoBlock does a great job of kind of showcasing that. And like they have like a hardscaper program where individuals that are just starting out, or they want to start in the industry, they can watch these modules and they can learn the proper install methods. Just because I feel like us as an industry, you can work for so-and-so company, and after a while, you're going to do what so-and-so says, like you're going to follow their practices, their applications, their build methods. And for all you know, that's not the right way to do things. So definitely learning from somebody that has industry experience, that knows what they're doing and what they're talking about, to me is probably one of the most important things. So if you're starting out, or you've been in the industry, or hey, you know what, you're looking at new install methods, I definitely urge you guys to look at Paver Pete, look at the hardscape modules that are available online. Or even if you just do patios and you want to learn how to do like retaining walls and all that, like I don't even know how many modules on there. There's just pages of them, So if you have time and you just want to keep investing in yourself, which I feel like is uber important, why not check it out? Another mentor, I really, like I said, I have a few, but another one would be Jack Kelly from Imagine Design. I feel like he's definitely someone who has pushed the envelope as far as like design and builds. And, it was great because we actually collaborated on a project that ended up winning an H&A award. But like he has like his own community, which is like Masterminds, and it's just a great community because it's just contractors helping contractors. Everybody's friendly, everybody's professional on there. So I feel like definitely being a part of a community, in this industry, just learning about what other people are doing and networking, I think is important, as well as just helping out other contractors, just because at one point we were all new to the industry. There's things that we all want to keep on doing. And if you can meet the right people, and, network with them, ask them questions, bounce ideas off them, I feel like it's very important.
Definitely.
And then, I also look at Matt Heiner, just because he's based out of Colorado, and he just does some awesome like water features. And I feel like he has like a really good eye for design, just because like when you look at all his installs, they're all like, I don't know, like how to describe it. Like, I just feel like they suit the background and the elements and the environment very well. Like, if you guys don't follow him, I definitely would recommend it. Like I said, he just does some awesome water features, and like the way he incorporates natural elements is out of this world. At least, that's what I think. And then, just kind of like my overall vendors, like Anna from Inlight is always awesome. She definitely goes above and beyond every time. She has helped me kind of like, hey, you know what, you should maybe look at this light for, this application. And they also have like a very good program, I guess, or education where like they have all these webinars, and you can join them, learn and, keep getting experience like that. And then, like I said, Phil from Unilock has, he helped me out a lot too, just because, I finally decided to do my first Unilock job, and he definitely stuck with me. So I give him nothing but props, But yeah, like I said, I urge everybody just to kind of keep on learning. And, a tip I would give everybody in this industry is, just kind of explore what's out there, try new vendors. If your vendor's only limited, if a vendor has limited amount of stock or they only stock a few products, then you're always going to be limited to that stock and those products. So fortunately for me, I have a whole bunch of different vendors where I get things from, just because, like I said, I don't really know what's out there, but I just want to keep on learning, like my tech rep, Michael Berry, he's always just like, hey, like he'll send me some inspiration photos, and we'll link up here and there, but like he's been a big help for me as well. Keith from Unique Lighting, definitely has helped me, with lighting in the past, just because it's like, I learned like about like those Luma cups, like the color changing features and like the hub methods. So, fortunately for me, and I'm in a position where a lot of my vendors are my mentors too, just because it's like, hey, what, well, their company is training them, and then they're giving me the advice and install practices that I need. And probably I'd say like my biggest mentor after that is a gentleman, I call him Reamer, and he used to be one of my vendors, and now he's following his dreams and he's a firefighter now, but he was probably the one that kind of opened my eyes to all the stuff that was out there, because before we were just getting things from, a local supply yard, and I would just look at what they had and that's all we would install. And he was just like, well, hey, let's go over here to this quarry, or hey, let's talk to so and so from this company. And he definitely opened my eyes a lot, just because it's like I didn't know what was out there. I was just so used to kind of seeing like, hey, this is what they have in stock, I'm going to use that. So I definitely give him a lot of, a lot of praise, just because I honestly feel like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. I feel like I'd be getting things locally, which nothing is wrong with, but just kind of, when you want to be creative, when you want to do things differently, it's important to know what's out there, so anybody starting out, kind of look what your dealers are stocking, look at what's in inventory. And if you see things online, ask them if they'd be willing to bring things in, especially if you want to build a name for yourself, if you want to be creative, there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of choices and a lot of variety out there.
My final question to you is a big one. And that is, what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning? From whether that's your very beginning in business or very beginning getting into the industry, or personal business related, whatever you need it to be. But what's that one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning?
I feel like learning more about the industry, learning more about, like I said before, like the education methods of everything. I feel like it would have helped me a lot earlier, just because you can talk about install methods, you can talk about what you want to do, but if you don't have the confidence behind it, how are you going to project that off to a customer? But if you can take time and really learn about install methods, practices, the do's and don'ts, the pros and cons, it only will help you propel into a different category of like, hey, you know what? I might have done that before, or I haven't done it, but I know how to do it, like the education I received from this, definitely will help. And I just feel like, there's just so much things in this industry. There's so much to learn. There's so much that needs to be done. So one thing, if I could go in the past, is I definitely would take advantage of, whatever trainings, whatever modules are out there. I'll look at the ICPI book. I'd read that, I would try to do things right the first time. Not that I didn't, because like I said, luckily I had a great team and, people that have been in the industry for years and people that were ICPI certified. So I would say, take advantage of knowledge for sure.
Absolutely. And Giovanni, great interview here. Where can our audience go find you, Stoneworthy? Where can they see that beautiful cover photo on the Unalak catalog there, as well as any closing comments or remarks? Where do you want to send our audience to?
Yeah, so absolutely. So you could follow our company at Stoneworthy Inc. on Instagram. And then if you want to follow my designer page too, I know I had a lot more posts on there and I just decided to delete them, and it's at Johnny Giovanni, and that's also on Instagram. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, if you guys would like, definitely follow. We're going to start posting more content on there.
Awesome. And I look forward to that. Giovanni, thank you so much for joining us here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it, Mike.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Go check out Giovanni at Stoneworthy Inc. on Instagram there and see the project that made the catalog front page for Unilock there. And also go check out our sponsors, GPS Track It. If you need GPS tracking for your work vehicles equipment, gpstrackit.com/howtohardscape, and Cycle CPA. If you need bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off their services there. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.